What's good, mi gente? Welcome back. It's your boy Raul. Thank you for joining me here on How Do You Say Success in Spanglish. Today, I have a very special guest, Brittany Simpson. Brittany, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good, good, good. Brittany holds a place dear in my heart because she coaches my daughter in soccer, but she also has an amazing story. So, just to kind of give a little intro on Brittany, Brittany Simpson was born and raised in Sunrise, Florida. She's been playing soccer since the age of 3 and also attended an academic and athletic high school where she played varsity all 4 years, as well as being part of various honor societies. She committed to the Yale's D1 soccer program after her sophomore year. During college, she played on the Yale's women's soccer team for all 4 years while majoring in chemistry. Captain her senior year, she continued to play after graduating in England for over 2 years. She also played on the women on the youth national teams and finally with the Jamaican national first team, qualifying for the 2019 Women's World Cup. Currently, she coaches girls 2013 youth soccer, which includes my daughter, as well as the United Women's Soccer Team as well. When not doing soccer, she's just a senior scientist at Pfizer. So, how's it going, Brittany?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me. Very, very
Uh,
excited.
yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I mean, from the moment this is my first year doing this level of soccer with my daughter. She's fairly
Mhm.
new to soccer. She's only been playing for a couple of years. And when we found out you had a coach, I was like, oh my God, this is such an amazing person. I'm glad to have that my daughter has this person as a role model. So thank you, for helping her out with whatever
Oh,
everything
of
you're doing in
course.
soccer.
She's lovely. I love that team so much. They're always super excited to show up for practices, games. They they want more practices, things like
Yeah,
that. I just love to see, especially at a young age. So I'm excited.
nice. Well, I guess to start off, tell me a little about yourself. Who is Brittany Simpson?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much for the great intro as well. That was great. But yeah, just like you heard, I'm born and raised in Sunrise, Florida. Lived there for a majority of my life. I have one older brother, so we both played soccer from starting at age 3. I actually played on a boys team until I turned around 10 or 11. Then I switched over to a girls team. I always like to joke around and say that like I was born on a soccer field because my dad also played soccer as well as professionally. So my parents, thankfully, and I'm very blessed to say that like I played every sport just to try out, see what I was good at. But secretly we always knew it was going to probably be soccer. But my if I wasn't at school or at my own games, I was at my brother's games. And if we didn't have either of those, I'm at the field practicing with my brother and my dad. So soccer was definitely a big, part of my life, especially being Jamaican as well. A lot of my cousins, my uncles, all of them played soccer as well. So just all around that. But the other side of me, like you heard, I'm a scientist at Pfizer. So my mom was very big on academics. So they're like, okay, you can play soccer. That's great. But, you also have to excel in the classroom. So growing up, I was at a private Catholic school my entire life through college, and I did very hard, rigorous academics as well as sports. So majored in chemistry, came straight from freshman year of college. Within high school, I knew I wanted to do chemistry from, I think, sophomore year. I had a really, really great chemistry teacher. She was very energetic. She just made chemistry really, really fun. So that kind of sparked my idea of, okay, I'm pretty good at this. Maybe this could going to work out. What kind of, profession I can get out of this? So that kind of got me thinking going into college of like, okay, what kind of specific kind of chemistry I want to do and how do I get to where I want to be. So did that through college. After my sophomore year of high school, actually, I committed to Yale for soccer. It was seems kind of early, and it is early. Making that decision definitely came from my older brother who played soccer at Penn State, and my parents were huge, huge help with that. I was looking at different schools, different levels of soccer, but I also knew I wanted to do really well in academics. So why not do that in an IB, do D1 while also doing that. Not the easiest task to do, but
Yeah.
let's see if I could try, and that was my parents' biggest thing. They're like, always aim high and, see where you land from there. They always wanted the best for us. So they sacrificed a lot for us to go do what we needed to do. So I committed there. Ended up playing all 4 years. Captain my last year at Yale, which was amazing. Loved that team. And majored in chemistry. So with that, I actually had an internship at Pfizer. And that kind of directed me of, okay, I know I want to do pharmaceuticals. How do I get there? What things that I need to do? Then I took that internship, learned a lot, came back to school, learned a lot about research and, things I can kind of excel in and better my own skills. And after that, I knew I wanted to do post school, like work, graduate work, whether it's PhD, master's, et cetera, et cetera. So I have that one side of, being so driven in chemistry and wanted to be the best at that, but I also really love soccer, so I'm going to continue both. People always ask me like, that's hard. How do you
Mhm.
do that? Especially at an IB, and chemistry alone is like the craziest thing.
Yeah.
And it is, I take that. But, like I said, when I was in middle school, I was always doing two things. I was always doing school and I was always doing sports. And I did that through high school and I did that through college. So even though, yes, the level intensifies, it was still kind of the same thing for me. I always knew that like this is just my life. I thought this was
Mhm.
normal. I didn't compare it to anything else. This is just what I knew. I was very structured. I had this 10 minutes to eat my dinner and then I had to do my homework and then I had practice or, things like that. It just seemed very normal to me. And like I said, I think that started from young age with my parents just being like, okay, if this is what you want to do, let's do it well. Like, let's, put you in the best spot, work very, very hard to get you to, where you want to be. So did all of that, played while I was getting my master's over in England. Again, kind of crazy now that
Mhm.
I think about it. And then like you mentioned, I played on youth teams, youth national teams, played with the Jamaican team, and ended up getting a job at Pfizer and hard to turn that down. So of course moved back over and now I'm a scientist there, but still have the love for soccer, of course. So even though I'm not playing professionally anymore, I wanted to be involved as much as possible. So, teaching your daughter and the rest of the girls on the team is the most fun thing for me, honestly. And teaching the college girls when they come back out of college during the summer, again, different kind of level, different kind of spot for me, whether being, a player versus a coach now. But definitely very, very fulfilling. So very, very happy about that.
Nice. It's a lot to be like to accomplish, and it's I can imagine that drill. I mean, when I was growing up as a kid, my dad was very strict for college. College was
Right.
everything. The only reason he let me play sports, well, he was a soccer guy too. So, but I won't go into like why I stopped playing soccer. The 80s were different. you know, I sat on the bench a lot because I was a big chubby guy, so they didn't let me play.
No.
So yeah, so it drew me away from soccer. I didn't like playing soccer because nobody ever let me play. So
Right.
eventually, when I get to high school, we're playing sports, and my dad was like, everything I had to do was for college. So I'm going to play football because that's going to help me, could help me for college and stuff like that. So that balance, was that something you learned early on because your parents were guiding you on all that stuff? Or did they say you could only play soccer after you finish your homework? You could only, or did you have limits on that from your parents?
I don't think we had particular limits on like, you have to do this before this, or, you have this time to do this. I think it's because I always joke that my mom was very heavy on academics and my dad was heavy on soccer. So I just had one full percent on the other and then 100% on the other. But it, we had this very structured schedule in a sense of like, I have this 30-minute block. This is the only time I have to do my homework. It's going to get done in this 30-minute block because I just don't have the time to do any other things. And it's interesting because it's nothing I never, it's not like, oh, you got to go do your homework. Like I was always excited to do my homework. Like I just wanted to go and do it. And it was like, okay, I can do this. I know I have practice later, so I don't need to, sacrifice this because I want to do something else. Like I could just get it done and then move on to the next thing. And like I said, I don't think that was brought on more so from my parents. I want to say that's more so from my older brother. He
Mhm.
was, I mean, he is one of the best role models I have in my life. We're 4 years apart, but we're best friends. Like that's my number one best friend. And he was very, very good at keeping things in order and, placing where his academics and where his sports will be. So I just kind of followed his lead. I was like, okay, he's doing his homework this time. I'm going to do it with him. And then we can go outside and play some soccer before our practices. So I think a lot of that just kind of came from following what my brother did. Like
Mhm.
he seemed to go well for him, so I was like, okay, I'll do what he's doing and see how that goes. So yeah.
Nice. And so you said you went to an athletic academic school. Is that like a special type of school or something you had to apply to, or does it just happen to be the school you
Yeah.
were at was really athletic and academics?
Yeah, it was, so I went to St. Thomas Aquinas, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and it's very heavy on, well, technically it's very heavy on like football for guys, but it's just very, very good at sports in general. So it's an application process. There's no scholarships when it comes to sports necessarily, but there's a lot of academic scholarships. So if you test well going in versus, your grades from middle school and things like that, then you can get in and excel through that. But St. Thomas is a very interesting place. I love it with all my heart. It's a Catholic private school as well. So that also kind of helped because I got introduced to so many, different kinds of people. Um, a lot of the kids that came out of there, especially like I said for football, they now play in the NFL. Or a lot of my teammates that I played club soccer with also went to my high school. So it was like I see them play high school soccer with them, but I also play club soccer with them. So the team was very good. I think we won states all 4 years of my high school, I believe, and then one national championship somewhere in the middle, I think sophomore, junior year. So then, I still got competitive soccer through that while, Spanish Honor Society, National Honor Society, those kind of things, because I needed to be in the AP class in order to get into an Ivy school, So it was just I was very blessed to be in that space to be able to do all of those things again at the same time. Um, yeah.
So you said you committed to Yale in your sophomore year, and does that mean that there was a certain set of requirements that you needed to maintain to continue and go to Yale, or what was that
Yep.
like?
Yeah, so for you to be able to commit to colleges that early, it's like a verbal commitment of just like, okay, we both agree that, when it's time, which is I think senior year, you do your signing day. I'm committed to you and you're committed to me kind of thing. But like you said, there is requirements. So you still have to get your grade, you got to keep your grades up. You got to test well. I took the ACTs at that time. So you had a certain score you had to make. All of that stuff still it's like a conditional offer in some
Mhm.
senses. I couldn't get a C, things like that. It was just like this, yes, we're committed to each other, but you still got to kind of
Yeah.
get yourself together, make sure everything's on track. You can't get in trouble, all of those kinds of things. So that kind of stuff didn't scare me, especially committing so early, because it was like, I'm gonna get in trouble with my parents if I,
Yeah.
get a C or like
Yeah.
whatever.
You're,
So
you're the least
you
of my worries. So
yeah, I was like, "This is fine."
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
"Don't worry about it." So yeah, it's crazy because I feel like it gets earlier and earlier for people to commit, but again, it's a verbal commitment, so
Mhm.
things can change, coaches can change, people that you talk to might not be there when you're actually going there. There's a lot of ifs and buts when it comes to committing that early, but I was very I would say I was pretty easy with picking the school that I wanted to go to because I had very specific things I wanted. I wanted a good school for academics. I wanted a good school for soccer. I knew I didn't want to stay in Florida more so because I can always come home and see my family. And that was about it. Like that was honestly pretty much it. So it was just, picking that and getting the best offer I could was, help out my parents
Yeah,
to the
tell
best
me
of
about
like
that.
I can. That's all I wanted to do. So.
And so, what impact did like club soccer versus high school sports like help in getting you in front of someone from Yale?
Yeah, so I will say that when it comes to committing for soccer wise, that came more so from club soccer than high school. Of course, high school soccer was still great. Like I said, we won state champs and things like that. But I was seen throughout for club. I was on a very interesting club team where it was just us as the team for the entire club. So I was on this team called Magic Jacks when I was younger, and it was run by this man called Dan Borslow, one of the best people I've met in my entire life. And he basically built this team of just excellent players from all across the world. Honestly, like we had a couple players that lived in California that played with us. We played with this woman that's her name's Bunny. She's one of the best players on the Jamaican national team. She played on my club team with us. She came from Jamaica and came and played. We had two players from Sweden. So it was just this hodgepodge of a team of just amazing players. But it helped in a sense of I was seen all over the world when it comes to college coaches, national team coaches, because we just played in every tournament there was possible,
Mhm.
honestly. And, of course, when you're winning tournaments, you're winning games, you're going to be pulling a lot of, trainers and things like coaches and stuff like that to come see you. So that helped me a lot when it came to just being seen in the soccer world. But for academics wise, like I mentioned before, being in a place where, very strict private school, you're able to do AP classes. You're able to, I did a couple, like I did high school classes when I was in middle school because my brother was going there. So I could go there in the morning with him and then go back to my middle school after. So I was doing my algebra and calculus class when I was in middle school beforehand and stuff like that. So it was just like chaotic, a little bit
Mhm.
chaotic, but again, I did those things. Like I always wanted to do those things. So I was
Yeah.
like, I want to be, at the best school. I know I have to work being a minority, like a Black woman. I know I have to work 2 times as hard just to be seen, whether it's in academic, sports, or whatever it has to be. So putting myself in those quote unquote difficult situations was okay with me because I was like, okay, if this is going to help me in the future, I'll do it. Like I'll work
Mhm.
hard. That's not gonna turn me away. So yeah.
And what was kind of like your ultimate motivator? Was it the hopes of becoming? Because I know you're balancing the academics and the athletic. Was it I got to work really hard because I know this is going to become a professional soccer player? Is it I want to work hard because I know I'm going to elevate myself as a person and become more academic and get all this stuff? Like, what was that
Yeah.
ultimate motivation for you?
I think I thought about this the other day. It's a good question because I think it ultimately comes down to like if I had those, as a young girl, you always want to be the best. You want to be a professional soccer player. I looked up to Abby Wambach and like I was like, I want to play with her. And things like that. So it's interesting because I personally don't think those were like my driving force. I honestly think I just always wanted to make my parents proud. Because they always say that, you're really good at this. Like if you just kind of focus on this, you'll be great. So I'm like, you know what, you're right. Like let me focus on this, and prove to them that like, yes, I can do this. I can be the best. So every time like I said, my mom was very high in academics. She's like, if chemistry is going to be your thing, like, what do you want to do? Like, where do you want to go? And I was like, okay, well, Pfizer's the number one pharmaceutical company in the world. Can I work there? And she's like, if you put your, mind and heart into it, you definitely can. So my dad on the other side, he's like, you're good enough to play on national teams. Is that if that's what you want to do, you have to put your 100% effort. And I was like, you know what? If that's what you think I can do, I want to get there. I want to work as hard as I can to get there. So like I said, I think it's just a base of making both of my parents proud as much as possible. Um, honestly, what's my driving force? It's like I said, I have goals and ideas of what I want to do, but as long as like I prove to them, okay, I'm working so hard, maybe I don't get there. That's just life, but I'm gonna try as hard as I can, just to prove to them, like, yeah, I can do it. You're right.
Mhm.
Like, thank you for trusting me. Thank you for believing in that I could. So yeah.
Nice. And then when you finally started going to college, I'm guessing, did you still have to apply regularly, or was it more of a, here you go, we
Yeah.
got through?
Yeah, you're in.
Yeah, you're in.
No,
Yeah,
yeah, you still have to do regular application process. So I did early decision. So you
real, real,
basically
real
do
early
the
decision. So,
yeah, yeah, really early decision, honestly. So when you're a senior, you could apply on like was it early action, I think it's called. And then you're able to get, if you're likely to get in, you get a likely letter. This also could probably be different, for different colleges. This is just Ivies in general. So in like October, I think I got a likely letter of just saying, you're likely to get in, you're a high prospect, et cetera, et cetera. And then decision time, I think is in January or February, something like that, when you get your acceptance letter and stuff. But it's the same thing, same application process as everybody else. Still got to take the ACT, still got to do all that good stuff. Because with Ivies, they don't give sports scholarship necessarily. So a lot of that had to come from like those scholarships that I got all came from academic. Yes, I was likely to get in because I was committing for soccer, so that that's where I was going. But I still had to, pay for the school. I still had to
mhm.
get in and things like that. And as much as I love my parents, I got to help them out too.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
again, that comes with the, I want to focus on academics, and if this is the thing I want to do, let's see, the best way to put myself in the best spot to get there. So yeah.
Yeah, and when when you Sorry, I'm blanking out for a second, but when you
No, you're good.
finally got in, you know what I mean? What was that
Yep.
like? Did you colleges? I don't know what your school demographic was like in
Yep.
Florida, but I know for me, my demographics very like Black and Latino driven. And then I got to college, and I was like, "There's nobody here that's like me." You know what I mean? We
Yep.
make up like
Yeah.
5% of the school.
Yeah.
What was it like for you when you went to Yale, and did soccer kind of help build something for you that made it feel more like at home for you?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, like I mentioned before, I went to a Catholic private school growing up, from all the way up until college. So, I was very much in more of like a white space growing up, whether outside of anything else, it was mainly just school. Was like I was the only black woman in my middle school until I think sixth grade. And obviously, when you're a child, you don't see those things, you don't notice it as much. But when I got to high school, it was a little bit more diverse, especially with it being like application process and things like that. But still, it was still heavy on white. So going into college, it's especially with Ivies, there's bits and pieces that are kind of the same. I think demographic wise, my college and my high school are pretty similar. But me being able to be, especially in sports and being on teams and being on different societies in college, I was just immersed with so many different kinds of people and very, very interesting people when it comes to just the way they grew up is very different than mine. Not necessarily in a good or bad way, just very different experiences. And I'm very big on learning from people's experiences because I feel like that could drive you to, being a different kind of person or, just trying something new and completely. I met people start from freshman year of college. I met someone that had done like an internship and did surgery on like a little baby. And I'm like, where did you do that? And he's like, oh, I did it in Turkey. And I was like, I don't even know where Turkey is. Like, what's going on? So I was like, I always say, like, Yale was such an amazing experience because it just put me in such a space where I had so many different kinds of people from all over the world. And I talked to everybody to understand it. So I
Mhm.
think the biggest thing that, well, one, I had a high school teammate and honestly childhood best friend that came to Yale with me. So she played soccer with me as well. So that definitely helped kind of ground me of just like I'm just a little girl from Florida, like Sunrise, Florida. Like this is, I'm still just me. So that definitely helped a lot.
Mhm.
But also, I think I put a lot of emphasis of just focusing on, the things that I can control. So I knew I wanted to do chemistry. I knew I wanted to do well in soccer. So I just focused on those two things and any like extracurricular stuff. I was, in a painting class, I was on the dance team, et cetera, et cetera. Those are just for fun. But as long as I kind of focus and, have my goal from the start and just try to get there towards the end, that kind of helped just, bring me back to life of like, this is a dream, but let's see what I could do, while being in there. So
I mean, the transition from high school to college from just about everyone is like, oh my God, this is a lot harder than I thought.
yeah, it's
And,
jarring.
and, and to balance that and sports on top of all that, while
Yeah,
you were used to the difficulty challenges and you seem to have always challenged yourself extra. Like what I know, I wanted to do chemistry in college as well. And I went
yeah,
to like a very poor school. We didn't have AP chemistry at all. But I did take 2 levels of chemistry because we did have like block scheduling, so I could take extra classes. So
right, yeah.
it was like my junior year, and I'm in Chem 2, and my teacher walks by, and nobody's in class, and she's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Waiting for you to take my class." She's like, "You're not a senior?" I'm like, "No, I'm a junior." And so the next 2 weeks, I
Yeah,
was showing her Photoshop because there was nothing for me to do in my chemistry class. But we didn't have like, when I got to college, I just got railroaded by chemistry, so the
yeah.
challenges were a little bit too much for me. Did you feel more overwhelmed, and how do we able to balance that for yourself?
Honestly, I didn't feel that overwhelmed more so because like I mentioned before, we were as kids very structured in a sense of like every time there was something that we were doing,
Mhm.
like there was always a purpose. So I didn't mention this before, but I also danced for like 18 years of my life.
Oh, yeah.
So not only was I doing school and soccer, I was also dancing.
Wow.
So it was like get up early in the morning, go to my class at high school, come back, go to middle school soccer practice, go to club soccer, go to dance, or no, go to dance and then go to club soccer, come home, homework, food, go to sleep. Like that was the day
Uh-huh.
basically. more things and hours in the day, honestly. So going into college was just a bit of the same, right? It was morning practice, run to class, run to lab, go back to practice, homework, study, essay, whatever it is, sleep, repeat the next day. So yes, it intensified 100% in terms of like level of difficulty, but it was still kind of the same movement, I guess, to me at least. I had to definitely. Yale is one of those places where it always felt like everybody was there to help each other out, which I really, really appreciated. I didn't feel that at other places that I went to go visit before I committed. So that was a big thing for me. Like I want us all to succeed. That's everything I got from. So if I needed help with something, it was very, very easy to approach the professors or approach the TA or something like that. So if I was falling behind because I was writing my my lab report on the bus back from a game. They were really understanding with that because they knew we're college athletes. Sometimes it's just impossible to make a class or make a lab because I have a game or practice or something like that. Um, Definitely challenging, but again, I don't think it changed too much for me because I've been doing it for
Yeah.
way too long.
So, I mean, when I took chemistry, I know it's a lot of classes for one class in chemistry. You're
Yep.
doing like your 3 hour classes. You're doing 3 hours of lab. You're doing 2 hours of pre-lab, and then all
Yep.
this extra stuff. It's like 10 hours a week,
You're
and
just a whole day, yeah.
yeah, and that's just the one class. So yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine. So all I'm picturing is you have like in Harry Potter with little time turner, like going back in time and getting all your classes.
Basically,
Like,
yeah, basically, because like I said, I had lab as well, which is 5 hours. It's or 4 hours, depending on how the lab goes, but it's
mhm.
usually all afternoon. So it was like that. I had to hop on the bus to go to the field to practice right after, or like I said, we have games on the weekend. So if I have a lab report that's due on Monday, I'm writing my lab report on the drive to the field. Play my game on the ride back. People can go out and do whatever they want, but I'm sitting there in the library finishing my lab report. But again, it like stuff like that, I was like, this seems right. Like
Mhm.
this is what I had to do before, so it all adds up for me. And like I said, I had the goal in mind of I want to be a chemist, like I want to do that, but I also want to be possibly a professional soccer player. So these are my main focus. Everything else, can be for fun or I enjoy it. I will be try to fit the time in to do it. I did a painting class. I did drawing to kind of ease the struggle with other things, but again, like I always was just like, these are the things I want to do. If this is a sacrifice I have to make right now, because it is, then I'm going to benefit later on. So, yeah,
It's a great mindset to have, and it's a great mindset to have with a difficult thing to keep on track. You know what I mean?
yes,
It's yeah. So
yeah,
so I
definitely had help along the way from family, friends. Like it's a hard thing to kind of keep consistent with.
no, and I think the consistency is the key. I mean, I think that's
Yeah,
something I tell Eva, my daughter, all the time when it comes to soccer. Is like,
yeah,
don't expect yourself to get from here to here in one day. It's little incremental increases that you just got to keep doing it. You just got to keep doing it.
you
And
gotta keep doing it. Yeah.
well,
Yeah, and
but
that's what I tell the kids too. It's especially when we do technical sessions, I'm like, it might seem tedious because we're doing, touches this entire week, but trust me, from what you guys were doing last week to what we're going to be doing next week, it's going to pay off a lot.
mhm.
You might not see it right now because it's small gains, each hour, each day. But when you think about it in a full scheme of things, you're like, oh, it was worth it. Like I'll
Mhm.
do that again, honestly, because it feels so much better in the end. So gotta keep
And
that mindset as much as you can, as hard as it can be.
and so then you ended up becoming captain of your team your senior year. How's
Mhm.
that?
That was amazing. I like I said, I was blessed to have such great teammates that I'm best friends with till this day. But it was interesting because I had a lot of struggles through college when it came to injuries as well. So my oh gosh, my sophomore year, I dislocated and broke my ankle in our first game of the season. So I was out for the season, unfortunately. So that was super, super tough. My parents were there. They saw the whole thing.
Oh
My
no.
brother was watching the game online. He saw the whole thing. It was a mess.
Mhm.
And then right before the summer before my senior year, I tore my Achilles. So again, out for the season. So it came to me to be a captain that isn't on the field for a whole team of girls, which was a difficult thing, of course, from a perspective of like I want to play pro, I want to do this, like this should be my year, this should be like the best year that I can get. But also I'm now the captain. Like, how am I going to captain a team when I'm not even on the field? So looking back, or even when I was in the moment, to be honest, I kind of sat myself down and I was like, okay, this is the state of the situation. Like, I'm not going to stitch my Achilles back together. Like, how am I going to make this, make the most of this? And I'm honestly, I go back and forth, but it is a thankful moment of like, yes, that happened, but I learned so much from just being, a leader off the field. I had to learn how to be a captain coach. Like, I had to learn how to be that middle bridge between the players and the coaches and try to delegate certain things and, hear their problems, bring it to the coach and try to find a compromise. So all of those lessons, as unfortunate as an injury is, and I know a lot of people that happens to a lot of people, unfortunately, like I have to see the good in it because it's like I'm gonna, I can't cry every day. Like I can't, it's gonna bring me down if I think about it the other way. So I'm like, okay, how can I make this, benefit from this as much as possible? So, I did a lot of leadership classes. I did, a lot of different things to see as best as I can, how can I lead this team? It was a different thing, but like I said, I'm grateful for it. And it was one of my favorite seasons just because I had the best class that helped, they were kind of captains. All seven of them were captains for me. We kind of had, we captained the team together, which was a really, really different experience than we've had the past 3 years. So things like that, I try to see at least the benefit out of those kinds of things because, wasn't our best season, but it was still a pretty good season. And I couldn't have done that without any of the people that helped me out, as well as, my coach and trying to figure out, how I can still, be involved as much as possible.
Nice. And so then you ended up going to get your master's, and
Yep.
you were also playing soccer at the same time. So this was all
So
in England.
yeah, so the persistent person that I am,
Hmm.
I was like, I'm not gonna go out on an injury. Like that can't happen. So of course, throughout that year I was doing physical therapy. They told me I usually Achilles is like an 8 months to a year recovery. I was like, I'm gonna be 7 months. Like I'm gonna work as hard as I can. So throughout that whole season, I was just working. I played with the team in the spring. I think my recovery process was like the 6 to 7 month mark, 6 to 7 month mark, and played with the team during the spring. It was definitely hard, trying to get back into the aggression and all of those kinds of things. But I use that to be like, okay, I'm capable of coming back from such a bad injury to play again. So did that, played with the Jamaican team a bit. And then I ended up saying, okay, I might want to do my master's and my PhD in chemistry. Where's the best place where I could do that as well as still play? So my dad is from England. He's from Croydon, England, so South London area. So I have family over there. So I was like, this is perfect. They speak English. Like this is amazing. And like I said, we were a big soccer family, so we're Chelsea fans. And I was like, London's perfect. Like, let me go, let me go
Yeah.
over there and go see a couple of Premier League games and all those kinds of stuff. So went over there. I actually went a little bit north. So I went University of Nottingham. I did my master's of research, so strictly lab work. Your typical 9 to 5, basically what I do now. Typical 9 to 5 kind of thing in lab. But I was like, okay, how can I play as well while I'm here? So played with the school team and also trained with Bristol City, trained with Leicester, played against Aston Villa and things like that for the women's side. So did all of those kinds of things just because I was like, I'm not going to let an injury take me out because my goal is to be a professional soccer player. Like I want to make it. I want to work as hard as I can to get there. So I did. I think I really, really wanted to.
And do you just like
So
walk up to to a club and say, "Hey, I'm interested," or like how does you
no, yeah.
like
So
is there a LinkedIn for soccer? Like what's going on?
honestly, kind of being in the soccer world is an interesting thing because it seems so big, but it actually is kind of small into some ways because everybody just knows each other. And it just so happened that the one of the assistant coach for I believe it was UPenn, University of Pennsylvania, who I played against before, and she seen me play. She happened to be one of the coaches for a London team over in England. And she was like, she was like, oh, you're coming. Like this is the team. You can come play with us or things like
Nice.
that. And then the coach that was at the time, she didn't end up being my coach, but before the school that I went to that I was playing with their team, she's currently the national coach for Northern Ireland. She was the assistant coach for Chelsea women's team. So she also had a lot of connections. So she was like, yeah, send me a highlight tape. I sent her that. I have like a soccer resume. I sent her that, and she was like, "Oh yeah, come play. Like you can come play with us." And did a couple tryouts here and there and stuff like that. So a lot of connections in some ways, but like I said, the soccer world is everybody knows each other. So reach out to my coach. My coach reached out to somebody else, and then all of a sudden I'm like on a team doing something else.
Nice, nice.
But yeah,
So what is one of the things that pops up a lot in here? Networking. Networking is really important
yeah,
on
yeah, it's
everything.
huge.
So
It
and
really is.
and you kind of yada yada your Jamaican team. What was your experience with that?
Yeah, the Jamaican team was amazing. I played when I was younger, and I also played against them when I was on the U.S. national team when I was younger. But as I got older, I knew that my family's mainly Jamaican and British, and I want to play for Jamaica because I feel like that just felt more meaningful for me. So when I one of the coaches at the time, he again a lot of connections, a lot of little
Hmm.
things. He was the head coach of a team in Orlando, and we played against his team so many times. We've beaten, we've lost. It's just they were one of our rivals growing up, so he already knew who I was as a player. So when I mentioned, I think my father mentioned to him that I wanted to change over and play for the Jamaican team. He ended up being the head coach for the Jamaican team like a year or two after.
Nice.
He called me up while I was at college and stuff like that. So played with them for a couple of qualifying games. I couldn't go to the last one because, like I mentioned, I tore my Achilles. So that last one I couldn't go to. And that's also part of the reason why I worked so hard to get back into playing after my Achilles because that summer it was the World Cup. So I went to South Africa with the team, played with them there. I unfortunately couldn't play in the actual World Cup because of the Achilles. I wasn't cleared to play. But again, even doing the qualifying match, even doing all of those things and training with the team was more than enough experience and meeting such lovely people. So very, very grateful for that.
That's awesome. And so going back to grad school, you're doing your
Mhm.
labs, you're doing this stuff, and then I guess you graduate. Do you decide to come back to Connecticut or?
Yeah, so I that was around when COVID started, so there was a lot of things shutting down. I couldn't go in lab anymore, and I was applying to PhD programs. Um, but I also reached back out to my old lab head at Pfizer when I did the internship. And I was just wondering if there was any jobs. I don't know, maybe
Mhm.
something pops up because I knew from that experience I wanted to come back to Pfizer or go into pharmaceuticals in general. So he mentioned there's a couple open positions. If you apply, just let me know. And I applied for that, and I also applied for PhD programs. And even though I did get into PhD programs, especially over in the UK, and I was thinking about staying so I could play a bit more, um, I knew that I missed a lot of my family, my mom, my brother, and being closer to them meant a lot, especially during that such a hard time for everybody. So I fortunately got the job at Pfizer and just moved back over. Cold state of Connecticut.
Yeah.
But it was still a part of home to me because I went to school here. So I still knew the area. I still had a lot of friends here. I still had, things that I knew that I could do around here. And again, a couple connections of getting me to CT Rush to play and coach there and get to know the team. It still connected me to soccer, even though I chose to not play professionally anymore. I knew I wanted to do something. So I was like, okay, if I work at Pfizer, that's amazing. I had my goal of being professional. I did that. So now maybe this is the time for me to make my goal of being a professional chemist to some extent. So, didn't want to lose the soccer side. So, that's where the coaching bit comes in. But this is, I'm on the path of, getting to that other goal that I also set for myself when I was younger. So that kind of, I think, geared me to making that big decision of coming back over.
Yeah, and when it comes to being like a scientist and a chemist, I think it's kind of a foggy world for most people. They don't know like
Yep.
how do you become a scientist? How do you become a
You're like, what does that
chemist?
mean?
Yeah, uh, yeah. What does that mean?
Yeah. No, yeah. I chemistry. I love chemistry. I'm a big person that does puzzles. I like jigsaw, like any kind of crossword, something that you can solve basically. And chemistry is an interesting thing where you're presented, a structure that you have to figure out how to make. A lot of these things are very, very new, and first in class is what we call it. So it was one of those things where like this is something I can be very creative, and it's very difficult. It's not for everybody. You definitely have to have the mentality of being very persistent, because 99% of the time your reactions don't work, and that's a very stressful, very hard thing to kind of just like ingest every day. But when you think about the big picture of like, okay, if this thing actually works and goes through the clinicals and becomes a drug in a couple of years, that's amazing. Like that's going to affect a lot of people. So again, that end goal, that outcome is what I usually gets me out through the day, honestly. Not my day to day, but thinking about becoming a chemist, becoming a scientist. Scientist is a very broad thing, because you could be a scientist in like a lot of different things. But being a chemist in general, it's like I mentioned, it is difficult, but I always think it's very fun, because like I mentioned, I'm a puzzle person. I like to solve problems. I like to try to talk and figure it out as best as I can. And like I said, my chemistry teacher in high school is what brought me here. She made chemistry so fun. She connected it to our daily thing. She said it, you like cooking? It's basically cooking to some extent. So thinking about how joyous she was, I was like, okay, maybe I can actually do that. So having that from there, moving into college, doing it all 4 years, trying to get connections there, and now doing it Pfizer, it's like it's amazing. I love my job. I kind of make my own schedule to some extent, where I still have to watch my games and Premier League and all that good stuff, Champions League. So I plan my meetings, and I'm in lab for the most part. So I am on my feet. I work with my hands. Your typical, if people think about like chemistry, you're in your lab coat, you have your goggles, you have your gloves, all of those kinds of things. But it is a great community, and great people that I work with. So very happy to be there.
And is it still something you're thinking about for PhD?
I am. It still trickles in the back of my mind. But it's interesting because I have this battle between staying where I am and kind of just learning through experience versus a PhD. I think there's very big benefits to both. But currently I've been learning so much over the past 3-4 years that I've been with the company. Just being moved to different projects, working on different things, and working with different people, where like you don't get that as often with a PhD, where you're very highly focused on one thing. So I've been enjoying this so far.
Yeah.
I always say that, like, I'm probably at the point where I might not go back, but again, like I always strive to be the best that I can be. So if I, next year in a couple of months, I feel like it's probably the best thing for me. That can kind of move me up a little bit faster or get to where I want to be, then I'll go for it. But currently I'm very happy of, learning from all of just in action on the job kind of thing. So it's been nice.
Nice. I mean, um, like you said, people think scientists they don't really have an idea, so it's nice to kind of
Idea.
get kind of idea. Well, what the hell does a scientist do? What are
Yeah,
you actually doing in there?
typical, like, it's very much like you expect of, like, a little beaker,
Mhm.
sometimes you have a little color change. You're basically mixing it together to try to make something else. Yeah, it's trust me, it's very, very complicated, but on a grand scheme of things, it's very simple.
And you started working during COVID, you said?
Yep. So right in 2020, I believe is when did I graduate? Oh goodness. So I started working at like middle to end of 2020. So right in the midst of COVID, basically. So that was a very challenging time, because as I mentioned, I'm in lab for the most part. So I'm in person. I go in office all the time. So it was a lot of restrictions when it comes to how many people, who's qualified to be on site. So we're not risking anything. 6 feet apart, which is also difficult because I work right next to somebody. Like our lab hoods are right next to each other, but I had to be moved on the other side. It's just there's a lot of safety reasons why, because I can't be in lab by myself just in case something happens. Someone has to be there. But 6 feet apart, like there was a lot. It was very, very difficult, and a very stressful time for many reasons. But
I mean, it's already a very restrictive job. Like you have very
exactly.
set rules that I need to do this a certain way, and
Yep.
any additional variables just complicate things to a maximum. I
Complicates
kind
it
of.
completely.
Hmm.
Exactly. So it was stress already packed on more stress than I was there already. So it was definitely an interesting time. Thankfully, we're in a lot better time now. Um, but yeah, like I'm it's interesting because I also can compare it to when I was an intern where there was, bustling of people all over the place. There was very lively, we had events, we had interviews, we had a bunch of stuff going on. Whereas when I started actually on the job, it was silent.
Hmm.
There was like 6 people in my little area. So yeah, it was definitely an interesting situation, but again, grateful to be able to start and have an impact on like that whole pandemic. So yeah.
What kind of things were you working on? Was it any of it co-related, or was there other things that you were working
Yeah,
on?
so I didn't work on like because at that point, so a lot of the times it's kind of hard to explain, but the drug process is very long. So it
Yeah.
usually takes like 5 to 10 years for anything to come out. So for Pfizer to be able to get that out super, super quickly was a lot. Like it was very, very hard to do. A lot of people had to be involved. So I was involved to like some extent when it came to more like the analytical side of things. But like it was already moving through the process where I am. So the things that I usually work on, like what I'm working on now, is very early stage. So we make very small amounts of compounds and things like that to be tested in like on rats and things like that. So it's very more so small scale. And then when things come back, data comes back very good, then it can go larger scale and it goes into the clinic, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of different places in hand. So that's why I said there's a lot of people involved. But I'm more on like the early stage of trying to discover stuff. So it's a bit harder because, like I said, a lot of the times it's new space, and you're kind of, piecing things together to make it make sense. But yeah, it was interesting because the people around me, since they were working there before, were highly involved with it. So I was just watching them and seeing what's going on and seeing how the process goes. But yeah.
Nice. And so now you're doing that, and you're also coaching.
Yep.
And what impact has coaching had on your life?
Oh, coaching has been amazing. Like I at first when I first started coaching, I was coaching. Well, to be honest, I was first starting coaching in Florida, with like a U11 team of the old club team that I used to play for, and I was just in and out. I was more doing training, because me growing up training with my dad. My dad was my coach for when I was younger until I moved to the girls team, and he trained my brother and I throughout our entire life, basically. So being a coach at first, I was like, okay, let me just do training and kind of get to know the girls and see how the club team is, et cetera, et cetera. And then, someone reached out and was like, why don't you coach the team? Like, I feel like you would be really good at this. I was like, okay, I'll try it out. I did older girls just because,
Hmm.
again, I just came out of playing professionally. I can get and give some advice to that aspect. But what drew me to be more so a coach for like the younger girls was, I was so excited to go to practice when I was younger. I loved going to practice. Of course, you get to hang out with your friends and things like that, but just learning something new, trying, new skills at practice. I was a defender, so I was like, maybe I could score today. Things like that you don't usually do. I was like, okay, my brother taught me this. How can I bring this into my game? Things like that. I wanted to be able to provide that excitement for girls that when I was that young, like that age. So doing it like with your daughter and the team that I have now has been so rewarding and super fun. Because my biggest thing as a coach is, skill can always be taught. You can learn that. You're going to learn that throughout your entire soccer career, basically. But the love for the game is a very hard thing to achieve. So I'm gonna be a hard coach. I'm gonna make sure they're learning and I'm teaching them things, but I also want them to love it. I want them to enjoy practice and the games. It's not necessarily about winning and losing. Everybody loves winning, but as long as they understand the game, as long as they think they played well that day and they know why like things went wrong, et cetera, that's going to go a long way. And especially when they get older, that's going to play a big part in their soccer career. So that's been one of my favorite things just to see how the development goes.
Yeah, no, and it's been great. I mean, from a parent side of point of view, like
Mhm.
when it's funny because when I had Eva come there, she had only been playing like a year of soccer at that point when she tried out
Yep.
for you guys, like a little over a year. Um, and I kind of did it because some of the other girls were doing it, and they were like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you should come," and I'm like, and I just kept telling her, "You might not make it, so just accept that you might not make it, but I think it'd be good to practice going to tryouts,
Yeah.
just like another learning
She was
experience
so
for her."
nervous. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's just like, "Okay," and she just went and she just played, and then, you know, then we got the letter in, and I was like, Anita, I don't think we can buy a car right now because we're gonna have to pay soccer. So I was like, we're gonna have to hold off a bit on buying a new car. We're gonna because we got a new bill that we gotta do, and
Yeah.
we've been with you for like half a year, a little over half a year, and
Mhm.
the progress has been tremendous. Like even when we go back to rec, the town soccer, the other coaches who have seen it are like, oh my God, she went from barely able to move forward to like just control stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, and I still think she has stuff to improve on. So,
Yeah, yeah,
'cause,
yeah.
but it's just amazing. So, I really appreciate all the work you put into it. And I
Well, thank
see
you.
firsthand experience, how much she's grown from it. And
Mm.
like even just her head swivel, just like being on the field where she can know, oh, I got to
She's
come to this
moving.
side of the field.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, look at her, look at her.
Yeah.
So
Thank
yeah,
you. No, I appreciate that.
so yeah, usually around near the end when we start talking, I always like to come back and ask, if you could go back and talk to a younger version of yourself, what's something you'd tell yourself? What advice would you give yourself?
Ooh, such a good question. I think, as persistent as like I claim to be or I
Mhm.
hope to be, I think still like I would love to tell myself to keep going and keep pushing. There is gonna be a difficult path. Like I went through a lot of stuff. I lost my father in the midst of college time. There's just a lot of things that are gonna happen, but you have to keep going. There's always, the light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. And like, life is going to be hard. And most of the time, as much as you can plan, it's probably not going to go the way you think it's going to go. Um, but it's going to go the way it's supposed to. So it's hard, but you got to keep pushing. You just got to keep going. I tell myself that today. I want to tell myself that before, and hopefully in the future, keep telling myself that. So yeah,
Right. Awesome. Yeah, and I love the way you said it. It's not going to go the way you expect, but it's going to go the way it's supposed to.
yeah,
That's me and my wife kind of do that all the time. Like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Let's just,
yeah,
leave it in God's hand and keep moving forward. So it's,
exactly.
and so and then ultimately, how do you say success in Spanglish?
Ooh, that's a good one too. No, yeah, that's such a good question. I think it's just a matter of, like I mentioned before, success to me is just making my parents proud, making my family proud, and honestly making myself proud. Thinking about how much I've gone through and what I my little self planned to be, and I was able to at least accomplish it. Not necessarily in the way, like you said, like not in the way that I saw it, not nearly the way I saw it. I didn't think I was going to go, to Yale specifically. I didn't know I was going to do Pfizer and all that stuff. But I'm making myself proud and making my family proud, especially my parents, and my older brother. Like that's success to me. Like I did it. That's all I wanted to do, and hopefully I can get there. So yeah.
Nice. And I guess my last question is, what is your real opinion of Harvard? So,
They're fine, I guess. No,
uh,
no. I
uh,
have some friends that went to Harvard too. They're fine, but
yeah,
Bulldogs is really like
I mean,
the way to go.
I went to Boston University, so I have a lot of friends from
Oh yeah.
Harvard as well. So I always know, oh, it's Harvard Yale, it's Harvard Yale. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
it's
know that
it's funny
rivalry.
because it's like, oh, it's the rivalry, but like personally, we always like are fine.
Yeah,
Everyone's friends. We're all good.
nice,
But no,
nice.
it's all about Yale. It's all about the Bulldogs. Through and through. Yale till I die. So
Nice.
blue and white only.
Nice, awesome. Well, Brittany, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story. You've gone through so much, and you're a great motivation to the girls on your field. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to come out here and talk to me. So thank you so
Oh my
much.
gosh, no, yeah. Thank you for having me. This was great. I love this.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And obviously, for everyone else listening, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I hope you'll join me again next time as we continue to learn how to say success in Spanish.